Hey everyone, today we have Exmark. It's a 48-inch motor, the Kawasaki FC220V engine on there. It's a single cylinder. These also come in dual cylinders, I believe. At least I have seen them with dual cylinders. They may or may not be very common, of course, but as you can tell, it's missing a few pieces, but that's a different part of the video. We are replacing a lot on the deck, and of course the airplanes are going by. Where were we? We're replacing some stuff on the deck. In addition, we're going to be doing a general service on this machine. Now, what does a general service entail? Well, we want to look at the fluid. I already did that. It looks to be pretty full and pretty decent, so I'm not going to worry about that. If that was bad or low, you're going to want to replace it. Secondly, look at all the cables. I do need to replace the throttle cable on this, that I do know, so that one will be probably not filmed, but understand that we do need to get a throttle cable for it. When it does not have a deck on there, there's nothing to keep the back end of it up, which is why it's at an angle, so it's going to be a little difficult to do that, but what can you do? Next, tires, they all have good air pressure, so don't have to worry about that. Engine wise, what are we going to do? Well, this engine does have an oil filter. So putting on its side is actually kind of a benefit on this one for that. Every other way it's a hindrance. But we're going to be doing that. In addition to the oil, we're going to be doing a fuel filter. It does run new spark plug as well as air filter. So I think we probably just need to get started. I'm going to show the engine part of it. That part is pretty important. Everything else, while I'm not saying it's not important, I want to go over it real quick. While you have everything off, assuming that you're doing the same thing I am, but if you don't, you still want to take a look at the belt. To my knowledge, there's actually two different types of belts on here. There's one it's one I have, it's a lot longer, and there's a smaller one. And it just depends on the type that you have. Basically, if you look at it, if it uses one belt for pretty much everything except for the actual wheels that's hydraulically driven, then you're going to need a longer belt. But look at it, make sure it has no cracking. I mean, yeah, it's a little dirty, but there's no cracking, and it appears to be in pretty good condition. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. After you look at that, you're going to want to look at your deck. Now, usually, like I said, it's on the floor, but you're going to want to do a couple things. One, your spindles. I don't have any spindles because they were bad. Look at them, make sure they are okay. If they're not, you're going to have to do this. Replace or rebuild your spindle. So this is kind of a bad point in this video. I was able to talk the person into getting a new tensioner. Don't really know what that would be, but these bearings, yeah, I told him that they need to be replaced. He doesn't want to, just to save on cost, which is why I want to bring it up. Don't do that. I gave him complete, and I told him everything that I would recommend doing, and he did not want to, mainly for the cost as well as the time it was going to take, because I was going to get that one like in 2 days. These were going to take over a week to receive. I don't really know why, but he needed it, so that's the reasoning that he has. Whatever, to his their own. But I would recommend at least looking at your bearings, and if they're noisy like this one is, and this one. That one's not as bad, but that one's pretty bad. Let's see. I mean, it's noisy, but it's not like horrendously loud. There's a grease fitting. Make sure this is greased. That's not too essential, but you do want to have everything greased. You want to look at your wheels. Are they actually wheels or just nubs? So definitely take a look at that. And then at that point, you really are in pretty good condition. After we do that, I'm just going to pressure washing. We should be good. A couple things you can look at too are these little bushings. All but one is good, so I'm not too worried about that. I'll replace that one. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started on the actual engine portion of the video. The filter, the air filter at least, isn't all that bad. It's just one of these, and this is a moment you're going to want to take your pen and paper out because it's pretty complicated. And maybe a pair of pliers. I don't have a pair of pliers readily available, so we'll have to cheat. Okay, so that just opens up. You have two of these. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm kind of looking at a couple things. One, the fuel line, it's dirty, but that doesn't necessarily mean too much. It's not too horrible. It could probably stand to be changed though. If you're going to be replacing the filter, you always want to probably be replacing the line, especially if you use ethanol fuels, which I know a lot of people have to, so there's no judgment there. But if you do, then your fuel line over time is going to get hard. So that's obviously been used. So the complicated part of just putting the new one on, there was a little dust, but luckily it's on the side where the air filter is not going to allow it to go in. And then we put it back on, like so. Complicated, I know. So there's two things I want to go over. It doesn't really involve air filters, but it is very, very important. The first one not nearly as important, but see these, I don't know, can you see those? A little bit. See these little bushings? The ones that come on this machine, I believe, are like a plastic. I like to replace those with a brass one, mainly for the fact that brass won't rust. And plastic doesn't last nearly as long. And second of all, if you've never used this machine before, you want to make sure that, so how it ends up working is to get the wheels to start, you have to pull down on this handle. That engages it. What that does is it pulls on this, which then pulls up, up, and then the hydraulics continue on, and you get movement. If you've never used it, look at it. Make sure there's absolutely no tightness, that everything is in good working order, because I wasn't this person, but I work with someone routinely that bought a new one, didn't do this check, and now, unfortunately, when he turned it on, injured himself because it was engaged. And yeah, that's just not a good thing. So always be careful. I like to keep them pretty loose. So before I even adjust this, I've seen this engine run but it does go to the side a little bit, which is why I kind of bring this up. You can buy kits that come with everything you need, more or less, and they're usually fairly cheap. Problem with those kits are this: they usually do come with a spark plug. Unless you're getting one from Exmark, it's probably some unknown brand. That wasn't even tight. And just throw that away. Don't even bother. Get yourself a NGK BPR 6ES, which is the same one. This one's a 5, but they're the same size, so that should be fine. But do not use those cheap spark plugs. I tell you, they are complete trash. They will just stop on you. I'm sure I need to get a better angle. I'm sure there's people that have been using those spark plugs for a long time and they think that they're great and there's no problem. But I'm just telling you, no, they're complete trash. Okay, now that you've had it started with your hand, you never want to start it with the impact, because that's a good way of having a 5-second job turn into a 5-day job, waiting for parts and everything. Because it'll just strip it right out, and then you have to buy a new head, or at least a repair kit at the very least. Okay. Yeah, so now we're going to do the oil. Drained the oil, well, pumped it out. I saved you from having to watch that because it's not that entertaining. Now, before we continue, let's look at the new filter, make sure it's the good type, well, at least acceptable. Yeah, okay. Now, we don't really care if we damage this, because we have a good one. Which, these oil filters are not nowhere near as the quality of an automotive filter. Okay. Oil getting everywhere is to be expected. Take a little bit, put it on the ring or the gasket, or to kind of ensure a good seal. Granted, a lot of it is already on the sealing surface, so don't really have to worry too much about it. There we go. Now I'm just going to clean up. Unfortunately, making this so you can see and I can work is a little hard because, well, hands. But get yourself a pair of fuel pliers, fuel line pliers. Makes this a whole lot easier. It's going to leak a little bit. To put that a little higher. This is really good too if you have a stubborn line, because sometimes they get a little sealed in there. Oh, definitely make sure your fuel is turned off if you can, or at least crimped. You know what? I also don't like the fact there's no fuel clip. I get a fuel clip. There we go. The reason why it was kind of going off on one side, so like I said, one pull will turn that direction, both pulls will move it forward. If you want to turn, you release one and you press down harder on another one. Down here, this is the connection. Behind it is a little clip right there. That clip was not there, so someone had a bunch of zip ties, which is not a good thing. So I just got another set of clips, put one on, seems to work great. So right now I'm just going to work on getting the new throttle cable. I mean, it's literally just 2 screws, and that's it. And other than that, that's pretty much your maintenance on this. You want to check all your connections, make sure they're good, their cables are good, the fluids are good. I still need to put oil in it. As you can tell, I put the deck back on because as much as I would like to not have to lift it up to put the spindles on, I do have a lift for it, so why not use it? And yeah, other than that, that's how you maintenance it. So let me finish the throttle cable, put a little oil in it, and we'll give it a run. To avoid getting foot guillotined, I've jacked up the back and put it on jack stands. Like I said, the wheels on this were a little sketchy. It was starting, it was already kind of engaged. Don't really like that. So put oil in it, normal 1030, and has a plug, has a new filter. We know the deck is going to be okay when the spindles get here, of course, which hopefully is today. And I adjusted the speed a tad bit on the transmission. We do need to put these back into gear. Do that now. There we go. So until I actually press down on the lever, it shouldn't do anything. But just in case, like I said, I don't know this machine, and he was already telling me there's a problem. I don't want to have a problem. Throttle cable is installed. Seems to be working correctly. Well, from what I saw so far. Let's give it a pull. So the engine appears to be running fine. Yeah, this is a tad on the sketchy end. Gonna spend some time. In fact, there's these locks which you're supposed to use when you first start it, but let's just give it a pull and see if the wheels continue to run. Before, the throttle would not kill it, so that was pretty dangerous. especially since you already had a foot guillotine and then you couldn't kill it, so it's just going to continue to roll over top of you. Maybe choke. Okay, everything is done. I feel pretty confident. There should be a kill on the handle, but there's not. Like I said, it's been rigged, but who knows? The only other thing that they want me to do is to kind of make a deflector, which I'll make off camera. But other than that, that's pretty much it on tuning up and kind of general servicing on this. Break it down. Oil filter, plug, oil filter. Check the hydraulic fluid, grease anything that needs to be greased. There's a variety of areas. Check the spindles, see if they're noisy. Check the bearings, see if they're noisy. Check the blades. It's one thing I did neglect because they're sitting right there and they're just waiting to be installed. Sharpen, balance if needed, and check the belt. Grease all the fittings on the deck. You should be set. Also want to clarify the belt part of it. I said there's two different sizes, and there is. I do not mean they will always have two belts, one for the drive and one for the deck. I was talking about the deck, so you just want to verify the deck size. The actual belt going to the drive, that's a completely different belt. I looked at it earlier. It's in the same condition as the deck belt, so I'm not too worried about it. Besides a good pressure washing, I think we're set to go. So I'm going to install the spindles because I just got a notification that they are coming today, and be done with this. Put the covers back on and this should be it. Okay, so if you have a Kawasaki or a zero turn, more or less, the same thing for all of them, that's how you do a general tune-up. Like what you see, keep watching, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Have a good night.